What has not changed much is what the customer wants. I
Correct.
think that question will never change.
Mm.
And what I see is the supply chain that is able to organize itself faster to the customer need are the ones that probably wins or probably have an advantage in the market. So some of the things that I don't see changing in all these businesses is the fundamentals of supply chain,
Mhm.
like forecast, demand, supply capabilities, inventory management, logistic modeling, networks, how the raw materials are supplied. All those don't change.
Mm.
But fundamentally, what is different in this supply chains is how we approach the customers.
Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. If you are new to our channel, please consider subscribing to it and hit the bell icon so that you never miss an update. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very, very senior supply chain leader from Malaysia, Mr. Joel Solomon. Joel, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ash. How are you?
Thank you. Very good. Joel is currently the head of Asia Pacific supply chain management for BBraun, and I'm sure all of us have heard the incredible brand of BBraun. And earlier, he was in the supply chain and operations for Cargill, Campbell Soup, and BAT. And those of you who know me well will know that I served with ITC, which is part of BAT in India for many, many years. So, Joel, let's talk supply chain.
Sure.
I've often said that supply chain is such a critical component of our world, and yet it hasn't got the attention it deserves. So I remember when I was a young manager, the three service functions that used to be there, we used to have an accountant, we used to have a personnel manager, and we used to have a purchase manager.
Mhm.
Over the last few years, these have all evolved into C-suite roles. I want to understand from you, how has the supply chain function evolved over the decades?
Yeah. Ash, I think you're absolutely right. When I first started my career, supply chain is equals to, if you may, logistic manager, or in some businesses, they call it purchasing manager. Things like supply planning, scheduling, network balancing, optimization, inventory management, all these things were unheard of.
Correct.
I believe as the organization's journey, a lot of organizations started realizing small subsets of their businesses, like somebody looking at inventory, somebody looking at planning. If they hub all these things together with logistic, purchasing, procurement, raw material management, suddenly it gives them a leverage in business that they probably didn't look at together. So when I was in maybe 4 or 5 years of my working career in BAT, at that time, the leaders in BAT agreed to hub all these together and call supply chain functions. And I believe supply chain has ended up as a lever in most businesses right now to look at how to maximize the margins, profits, if you may. So I think over a period of time, supply chain has evolved to a point where it is a very pivotal part of the organization and a lever that the organization can pull in order to maximize the customer engagement. Second one, of course, is the profit. The third one is also balancing the entire network of supply for the organization. So I think it has evolved, and the values that you see in supply chains are changing even more with the digitalization age, if you may.
Very well said. So I've been speaking to so many leaders, and you also just mentioned, from being a cost center in the old days to now almost contributing more profit than marketing does in several functions.
Yeah.
But tell me, Joel, I want to first talk about the pandemic and the impact it has had on supply chains. How are companies rethinking their entire supply chain strategy after the pandemic or in the pandemic?
I think this is a very good question. A lot of businesses, when they set up the supply chain, if you may, they set up a linear line. Yeah, meaning to say, how do I connect my raw materials to my customer, where my factory sits, this and that. So that traditional supply chain may work during a non-pandemic situation or when things are normal. You don't have to focus on your customers that much. Just make sure your pipeline works, this and that. I think whenever you have a disruption to business like the pandemic, this and that, it's a very good period or it's a very good push to businesses to ask this very fundamental question. In my supply line, where does my customer sit? If it sits at the end and my raw material sits at the other end, then it's probably time to evolve. Now, I've seen most supply chains that are successful in making the organization grow in the right direction is when you put the customer in the center and you draw your supply chain processes around the customer. So when you do that, right, you will then suddenly see levers that you never saw in supply chain before
Mhm.
to respond to your customer's need. So when that happens, you start differentiating how you want to interact with your customer. So in the case of pandemic, some of the things that I see interesting,
Mhm.
e-commerce, you would have in Malaysia, it's amazing how Nestle, how Colgate Palmolive, how Mondelez is actually getting closer to their customers,
Mhm.
by taking out the distributor in the middle of them and the customers by approaching directly to the customers during the pandemic.
Right.
So the giants are actually getting closer to the customers, so which means the customer's voice is by becoming more important. But that doesn't mean they don't have their normal supply chain distribution to distributors, to the hypermarts, to the mama papa shops and all those things. So
Mm.
they've varied their supply chain or differentiated by getting closer to the customer. So that's what I mean by putting yourself, the customer in the center, draw the supply chain around the customer, and that will give you different flags, different differentiated models to approach to the customer. So those companies that are able to evolve or able to add on additional supply chain models are the ones that probably are more successful during a change like this rather than those that sit traditionally and wait for things to happen.
Fascinating. What an amazing perspective. Thank you. So, Joel, when I was reading about you, you have such a diverse range of experience, from cigarettes to commodities to food stuff to durables, consumer durables. You have seen it all. Tell me, what are some of the key supply chain differences that you've observed in these diverse categories?
Well, it's a very interesting question, Ash. For me, how I see when I started in cigarette, then I went into food,
Mhm.
when I went into agriculture supply chain, and if you may now medical science products under BBraun,
Mhm.
what has not changed much is what the customer wants. I
Correct.
think that question will never change.
Mhm.
And what I see is the supply chain that is able to organize itself faster to the customer need are the ones that probably wins or probably have an advantage in the market. So some of the things that I don't see changing in all these businesses is the fundamentals of supply chain,
Mhm.
like forecast, demand, supply capabilities, inventory management, logistic modeling, networks, how the raw materials are supplied. All those don't change.
Mhm.
But fundamentally, what is different in this supply chains is how we approach the customers. Cigarettes is all about branding. Yeah,
Correct.
what you see today, what you see your father probably smoke or your cousins, your nephews, what you yourself see during your schooling is
Mhm.
probably the attachment. If you talk about food supply chain,
Mhm.
it's all about affordability. Yeah, which customer segments you want to target. Agriculture supply chain is all about remaining close to the farms, to remaining as close as possible to your farms, whether they are small or big. If you
Mhm.
talk about medical products, it's all about how you engage your hospitals, how you engage your buyers in the businesses. So it's all about the customer centricity is what differentiates these businesses. Yeah.
Fascinating. So, my next question to you is we've all been working from home for the last so many months, around 17, 18 months. But what this has done is that as consumers, and you have repeatedly said that put the customer at the center of the supply chain, the customer, when it comes to food, has now got used to 30 minutes delivery. When it comes to any other product, for organization like Amazon Prime, they've got used to next day delivery.
Mhm.
What is this kind of customer expectation doing to the pressure on supply chains in the companies?
Um, you know, this is amazing because I think the biggest change or biggest pressure
Mhm.
it has put on companies and its supply chain is how close you can get to the customer. One, how fast you can get to your customer.
Mhm.
How third one is how fast you can respond to customer queries.
Mhm.
These are to me the new dynamics or the new levers that's impacting how customer perceive an organization on. So to me, I feel during this time, during this change, where we work from home, where we actually have to change the way we work, the traditional supply chain not going to change your supply to delivery.
Mhm.
So what changes for us as supply chain practitioners is how fast you can collect insights from this, how fast you can sanitize the data to sensible data, how fast can you reach to your customers.
Mhm.
So that also in a way helps you to take out all the fat or all the unwanted things that you see in your supply chain that you probably don't realize before this is impacting you because of the way you work. So this working from home, this new way of working where you probably spend more online and less physical has sort of sharpened the saw on some of these things. Yeah. But I suppose the one challenge we always going to have as humans, then interaction is very critical. So that part of the business is something that you need to find how to fix or how to keep evolving during these kind of times.
Fascinating. So, Joel, now let's talk a little bit about technology.
Sure.
Again, I'm much older than you, and my perspectives are therefore older. But 15 years ago, when someone spoke of technology in supply chains, it was to get a good ERP.
Mm,
And that time, everyone would say, "Oh, we've got a very, very technology-centric supply chain." But today, with the introduction of artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics in warehouses, including drones for supply,
mm.
what is your perspective on how technology is changing supply chains?
I think it has evolved a lot, Ash. I'm with you on this. Give you an example. When you are absolutely right, probably 15 years ago, when you look at the ERP with tables, different colors table, you say, wow, this is amazing.
Yes.
That is probably now considered a backbone. What is amazing now is the data fetching, yeah, if you may. So like this AI, ML, they are all evolving to the data that is coming as an input, how to respond to those data, how to respond to those simulation or sensitivities or data customer preferences, if you may.
Mm.
I've also seen things like, drones, like spiders that crawl on warehouse to pick the pallet boxes to bring down to the drones that's waiting for that to collect
Mm.
and take to the sorting hub and all those things. Those are the interesting parts of supply chain.
Mm.
I think for me, how I see being a supply chain practitioner is imagine you have two ends and you're sitting in the center.
Mhm.
So the one end is all these drones, AI, ML that fetches
Mhm.
data that are probably closer to execution point or
Mm.
closer to customer, if you may. Then you also have the networks that you work with, your raw materials, your suppliers, your factories, your supply hubs, and all. So
Mhm.
that's the other part of the network. So those, if you say are network points that you can see, imagine the table that we see 15 years ago, they are converted into network points that you see how much inventory each point carries, how much demands each point carry, or how much consumption plans each point carry. Those, and then this input that's coming in, you sit in the center. How you line up the data, how you make sense, and how you react to the data are what is critical in my opinion. So for me, 15 years compared, that data visibility is so much better now.
Mm.
So the decision making process needs to be faster in a way.
Very interesting. So, you had just a little while ago mentioned how the big companies are
Mm-hmm.
now trying to get close to their consumer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, as a supply chain, leader, visualize a situation where if I want a bottle of coffee powder,
Mm-hmm.
Nestle uses a drone and delivers it straight to my house?
I would think eventually this will become a point of measurement as a consumer.
Okay.
So to me, I'm not going to be interested as a consumer how the product comes to me.
Mm.
My interest would be, does the product come on time? Is it warm? As an example, illustration, the donut, is it still warm for me to eat? Is it still fresh? Is it comes during the stipulated time that I want? So I don't mind how Nestle drives that delivery to me.
Mhm.
What I'm interested as a consumer is that agility
Mm.
or that request that I want that I get. Yeah. So you're right. That will eventually
Okay.
come. Yes.
And my next question to you, Joel, is that uh, a very large requirement of every supply chain is strong infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how does a supply chain leader or a supply chain team cope with different types of infrastructure in multiple countries?
Good question, Ash. Just to give you a bit of an illustration,
Mhm.
couple of years ago, I actually did a massive footprint exercise.
Mhm.
So when we did the footprint exercise, because the idea is still the same, you serve your customer at the fastest or potential optimized cost and optimized delivery
Mm.
time. So with all this infrastructure that's differentiated from country to country, you also have trade barriers, excise, import duties, and all those. So to me, these are all the levers that you need to look at. So
Mm.
how you design the supply chain to serve with this different infrastructure is one. You may want to bring the premium products closer to the premium markets. So it might be understandable and acceptable for someone who's maybe in a developing country. When you order a premium product, it takes slightly longer lead time compared to someone who's in Japan who
Mm.
wants the premium product on his table the next day. So, but what you can do is for that customer that is in a developing country, you can you can advise what is happening to his product, or he has ordered, how is progressing, where is it, at what stage, which is what probably Amazon, in my part of the world, Lazada and all these
Mhm.
guys are doing. So that's the customer engagement that you do because you know your lead times are going to be longer
Mm.
than probably someone who's in a premium country. So you flex that infrastructure, you adjust your supply chain communications
Mhm.
based on which market segments that you want to serve. That's one. Second one, of course, is you look at your infrastructure in terms of hubbing. Yeah, maybe you want to hub some products, maybe so that you can cut down your reach to your consumer or your customer. Certain products you want to make it very premium. Ash,
Mm.
I just want to share very quickly a very personal experience.
Sure.
I ordered ball watch online. So
Mhm.
they are one of the first, the big German Swiss watchmakers
Mhm.
that actually started online ordering for Swiss watches. You should
Okay.
try. It's
Yeah.
amazing, the supply chain.
Mhm.
So when you place the order, because it's premium, the lead times are built to show that the premiumness in the watch itself. One.
Mm.
Second one, once the orders are all collected, there are something like a limited edition online orders, let's say.
Mhm.
And they actually take you through the process. Okay, your watch is at this stage being manufactured. Your watch is actually at this stage that is going to be delivered, and your watch is it's at this stage for going to be shipped out and all.
Mm.
And they make the journey very premium for you because it's a premium product, even though the lead time is longer. And the pickup point or the delivery point is customized to your requirement. Let's say you're in which location. Okay, this is the premium shop that we deal with. This is where you're going to go and collect. The last mile service will be for them to adjust the size and all those things.
Mm. Mm.
So I've also experienced that personally, and it's from Swiss to Malaysia. So the infrastructure is long, but the journey they make it pleasant, so you don't feel that infrastructure of the duration and the time, if you may. Yeah.
Fascinating. Fascinating. So, Joel, I'm now going to move to the next segment of our conversation, which are some questions for you personally. Our
Sure.
viewers and listeners love to get to know the guest a little more. So, when you look back at such an amazing career,
Mhm.
what would you say are three key milestones or pivot points?
Okay, good question, Ash. My first one is because I started my journey as a management trainee in BET. After my management training, I was doing material development for raw material
Mhm.
purchasing for a while, as in pure sense of purchasing. Then my boss gave me an opportunity to run the operation in a factory. We call it modular concept, and
Mhm.
I was given the opportunity to run the most premium, the most profitable product in BAT Malaysia's portfolio at the
Mhm.
time. And I took over at a time when we were not able to meet market demands. Our OTIFs were not fantastic, and our factory production reliability was bad. So within about 6, 7 months, I worked with the team. I turned things around. We became one of the best um, performance from an efficiency perspective globally for BAT. The cost went down, our supply reliability went up, and we were able to match demand for demand. In fact, we were going ahead of demand already. So that was a turning point. My boss gave me a chance to, instead of just managing a cell, entire department. So that's turning point number one.
Okay.
Turning point number two is I had an opportunity to do a regional role for BAT in Singapore,
Mhm.
looking at the entire region. That's when I actually did the footprint design for the entire region, and that was well received, well taken into consideration because it gave BAT a different way of looking at the business
Mhm.
and how we want to set up for the success. Because of that, I got an opportunity to return back to Malaysia as the ops director for the entire Malaysian
Mhm.
business.
Mhm.
The third one, I would say, my key milestone is where I am today. I was recruited to actually implement IBP for the region,
Mhm.
APAC, and my hiring manager decided to pursue something else. The chairman of the business agreed to give me a fair chance to shape the APAC supply chain strategy
Mhm.
based on some of the work that I've done with the end markets and also the region on IBP. So
Mhm.
this is my the third biggest turning point because it gives me an opportunity to
Fascinating.
run a very big supply chain network.
Wonderful. So, for a person who has done so many different types of supply chain leader roles, from where you stand today, as you look back at life and as you look ahead, what does success mean to Joel?
Okay, success for me, Ash, is it's not about the career ladder you go up anymore. If it happens, it happens. For me, is when I reflect back the last 20 years, at each milestone, you meet people. You have people working for you, you have peers, colleagues. My pride is when I see some of my boys and girls that I coached during BAT,
Mhm.
today helming, they themselves are either a director or a senior manager or a regional leader, or actually have moved on to do different things. I see their success,
Mhm.
and when they share what they're doing, I get a bit of a pride that I'm actually part of the building block that helped them to be where they are. That's
Fascinating.
where my
Wonderful. What a great
satisfaction is.
answer. I have time for two more questions now.
Sure.
So, my next question is that who or what inspires you?
Well, who or what inspires you? I am I am a very strong Christian. I spend a lot of time trying to understand what the Bible teaches.
Mhm.
One of those that really influenced me is Christ. Yeah, He came to serve the needs of many,
Okay.
and I always tell myself as a servant leader that is the best example on how you can actually serve the needs of many. That's
Wonderful.
one person. The second person is you spoke to a gentleman called Jeroen Pot
Yeah.
a couple of months back. He is another one who actually shaped me in how a leader should behave, carry themselves, how
Mhm.
a leader should develop someone. Those are two big persons in my life.
Wonderful. And my last question to you, and this is, Joel, for the thousands of people who will listen to our conversation.
Yeah.
What would your advice be to a young individual who is starting off on her or his career in the corporate world?
I would advise you, advise these young guys and girls this way. When you are given an opportunity, even if you don't like it, don't say no. Go and try. It may open up different windows, different doors that you may have thought not possible, or may not lead you to something. You will realize these doors that open up helps you build the knowledge, capability, understanding for you to do another role much better if you didn't have that door open. Give an example, I never really wanted to go into manufacturing at a very early age. Because I went there, my subsequent roles in supply chain allowed me to understand how I can pull the levers end to end much better. That's the first advice I would give. The second one is never lose your identity. Never ever forget where you come from. Never forget the sacrifices your parents have done to give you your education, to bring you where you are. Always remember that. So when you remember that, you will always remember to be humble, because as you grow through the organization, never ever lose your humility. The last one is, I would say, integrity. Yeah, have integrity that cannot be challenged, cannot be broken, cannot be torn into pieces. Hold that integrity tight, because one day you will see the value of integrity when you grow up in the organization.
Wonderful. Joel, thank you so much. Thank you for the incredible conversation. Thank you for taking me down your amazing journey in the supply chain. And thank you for sharing so much of your knowledge.
Thank you, Ash, for this opportunity. It was a great pleasure to share a little bit and give back to the community, if you may.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.